when I hear from someone that a transaction has failed, and sometimes the excuses that come from that, and I call them excuses because there's more than one way to do something. So if you are having a failed transaction, you've got to look at that and assess why. But even in the middle of that, right, there's more than one solution. Always more than one solution. So what it made me think of is, first, every transaction has limits, and you have to know that. But you have to be willing to push those limits. You cannot give up easily. You cannot give up quickly. Okay? So if you are to increase your productivity, be more successful, and I don't know, successful is defined different for everyone, but really if you're trying to make more money, sell more houses, you cannot be giving up very easily. You've got to hang in there and find more solutions. The second part of that is you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. So in real estate, like, what does that mean, right? You have got to be armed with knowledge. And if you're armed with knowledge, that's going to be bring a gun to a gunfight, not bring a knife to a gunfight. Having that knowledge is being prepared, really, before you jump into something, okay, or before you address something too. So, okay, so that's my lecture. All right, so we're going to talk about, these are the top, see how high we can get here. Okay, so you can see this. Okay, so this is the first one. Lending. So I would say this is probably number one for the reason that I hear things fail for people is lending. Okay. Within lending, why does it fail? Let me tell you why I've seen it fail. I've seen it fail. Well, we can blame the lender, which happens. They are at fault because they maybe didn't qualify the client well enough, or they looked at this is like exactly what I see all the time with lending failing. So the lender, the loan officer, gathers all the documents. Okay, it's their job to gather all the documents, but the good lenders are smart. The good loan officers are smart. So they can gather those documents. They will look at them. They will know if there's going to be problems in underwriting. They will address those problems ahead of time during the pre-approval before we even get into a transaction. That's the good type of loan officer. That's the one that you want on your dream team. All the other loan officers, they gather the documents. They're a paper pusher. They gather them. They send them off to the processors. The processors do their job. You're going along 2 to 3 weeks into the transaction. Everybody thinks everything's great. It goes to underwriting, and the underwriters flag it and say, nope, they don't qualify because of this or this or this. And that is probably the number one reason why I have seen transactions fail. Now, how do you fix that? Well, there's one way that you can try to fix that when it happens. If that happens to you, because maybe your client picked a lender that they shouldn't have, say U.S. Bank. I'm going to be mean. I'm going to say U.S. Bank. Okay, U.S. Bank's a friggin' pain in the butt. Okay, so they pick U.S. Bank, and you're like, don't pick U.S. Bank. And they're like, nope, I love U.S. Bank. I bank there. That's where I'm going to get my loan. Okay, great. And then things go awry with U.S. Bank. You don't just give up and say, okay, well, our transaction failed. I'm so sorry you're not qualified. Right? We'll try again next time. You don't. If you get a no from the bank, you take them to a different lender. Right? And if you don't have a lender that you absolutely love, get your lender that's on your dream team, you guys. 100% get your lender that's on your dream team. You've got to find that. The one that you trust, the one that you know will be creative, the one that can look at it from a different perspective, the one that can look at the numbers differently, that can look at the overtime differently, that can give a credit to offset what they need. I mean, there are so many different ways that you can get creative to qualify somebody. I had a client who had been in jail for like 13 months out of the 2 years like for work history, right? They want a 2-year work history. What was his work history? He was in jail. Nice kid. He was just being dumb. But he was in jail. So he has his lender. We go through this whole process. The lender strings us out for 2 months. 2 months. And then says, after the appraisal, after everything, oh, I'm sorry, he's not qualified. Like, we can't do his loan. And I was like, are you kidding me? Right? You got to be kidding me. Said, no way. They're like, no, the work history, that we can't make it work, whatever. So first thing I do is pick up and I call my dream team member, right? I call Whit and I'm like, Whitney, give her the scenario. This is what we've got. Give her the rundown. I don't like to waste my lender's time. So I try to give them all the information ahead of time, right? Up front, have the discussion and be like, okay, this is the scenario. This is what's going on with his work, blah, blah, blah. He had jobs other than that, right? But this is what's going on. So then she can take it, run it past her underwriters. She had a little creativity thrown in there. And she's like, nope, we can do it. And I'm not kidding. This other company, which I will never use again, but the other company ran me clear up to their VP in the area. And the VP was like, nope, we can't do it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, bad words want to come out of your mouth at that point, right? And he swore up and down that there was no way they could do it. And it was so fun to shove it back in their face when I was like, and we did it, right? And we did it. So don't just throw your hands up and be like, oh, this lender said no, because I will tell you, when lending happens or within lenders, the underwriters control the show. 100% the underwriters control the show. So depending on which lender you're using and where their underwriters are and I don't know what their parameters are, right? I mean, there's certain lending guidelines where, like, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and I need to have Whitney on here one day. It would be really fun to give a lending perspective. So I'm gonna coerce her to be on here. But there's certain parameters they have to be in, right, and guidelines. But then there's like all these other layers that get added on, it seems, and those are like company specific, or maybe it's their opinion. Maybe that underwriter says, no, this is the way it should be. You ever had that before? It's like your freaking teacher in like high school that says, oh, you get a C on this paper because this is the way it should be. Well, guess what, teacher? Like, it could be 5 other ways. It doesn't have to be this one way. Does that make sense? So many people get stuck on just one way to do something. There's just one way. There is not one way. We are very flavorful, full of people. And there is not one way to do something. There's many ways to do something. So that's the biggest problem that I see with lending. So you can then be armed with knowledge where you can be able to send your clients to lenders who are good, who you trust, who you know will fulfill their duties. But let's say you're on the selling side. Let's say you're the listing agent. I've had it where, as a listing agent, the buyer's agent and their clients, they're going along, and then crap hits the fan when they hit underwriting, and then they say they're not qualified. And I'm like, do your people still want the house? Yep, the people do. Great. They need to call my lender. Let's take it to my lender, see if she can be able to get it done. If anybody can get it done, she can get it done. Let's take it to her. And they're like, oh, yes, please. Save the day. So then we take it to the lender, and sure enough, like, I think I've had all but one in the last 7 years we've been able to take to my lender, and she's been able to do it. So even if it's not your client, they're not going to refuse help. A lot of times that buyer's agent has no idea, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know how to get help. So follow through, very important with that. Okay. And let me add too, it's not just the lender's job. Lending is not just the lender's job. The process is, the loan is, but you play a huge part in that. The other thing, I've talked a whole lot about lending because lending is usually a big issue. Holly asks, how do you vet a lender for creative lending? So the questions that I ask are, well, if you've ever had a bad experience, or I'm giving you some bad experiences, right? When I met Whitney for the first time, we went out to Hot Chocolate, And we sat and chatted, and I asked her some questions. And the biggest things that I wanted to know was, where are your underwriters located? If your underwriters are not in your office, they can't just walk over and ask a question. That is probably the number one thing within a company that I prefer. So why are our US banks and our Wells Fargo's, like, why is that a pain? Because they have this giant hub of underwriters in some other state. Could be in your state, right? But they're giant hub of underwriters in a different state. So they don't know your area. They don't know the homes. You're just another file. They don't care. They really don't care. So I tend to go for a smaller, not smaller, but, office that's a broker. So they can go to all different forms of lending. And then also because they tend to have their underwriters in their office. So they can walk across the hall if they have a question, and they can fix a problem. Am I breaking up, you guys, or is it just, okay, it's just you, Elena. I have the hardest time. There's a girl named Elena. Anyway. It's going to kill me. Okay. So that's what I usually will ask them is, where are their underwriters located? I will also ask them questions. Like, I had a specific scenario, I'll tell you, with me, that personally, we have a deadline for when we had to, not anymore, but we had a deadline where we had to file for our homeowner's exemption, which drastically changed how much tax we were paying in Idaho. And I was buying a personal home. This is before I had my license. So I was buying a personal home, and we were coming up close to that date. It was April 15th. And if we didn't close before, like, we had to close on the 14th because I had to go file my homeowner's exemption by the 15th, or I had to pay like $1,500 more in taxes for an entire year if we didn't meet that date. Well, we had our closing date. It was our 30 days. We should have been just fine. Well, here's my lender that I had. It was a bank. It was a credit union. It was a bank. That was not on time. And I said to her, if you don't make this date, it's costing me more money. So who's paying for that? And she's like, oh, I'll give you a credit. I'll pay for it. I'll take care of it. Okay, great, right? That's what they should say, because they jacked it up and it's costing me more money, and that's not fair. So we get to closing, and guess what she did? Denied it. I didn't say that. I'm not paying for it. I was like, you're full of crap, and you will never get my business again, ever. So the scenario that I presented when I met Whitney was just that. Hey, here's the scenario. We're up against this deadline, right? And you don't close on time. What do? Do you make the client eat it? Does your company take care of it? What happens? And she goes, no, if I didn't make my deadline, I pay for it. Right answer. Right? Without hesitation. And she has. If we've ever had any issues, she is very quick to go ahead and take care of something. We have happy clients that come back all the time. It makes a big difference. So, and you feel them out too. You can usually tell if they're kind of the creepy kind, if they're the ones that don't answer their phone. When it comes to lending, they've got to get back to you. Find somebody that you work well with. You've got to have a good, like Whitney and I, we run on the same wavelength. Like, we just work really good together. We think very, very similarly, so we can get crap done really quickly. So find someone that you can get along with, but underwriters need to be local. It's huge. Huge, huge, huge. Especially if you're getting close to closing and you're like, really, like, okay, you have a seller, say you represent a seller, right? And they're going to purchase as well. And you're like right close to that closing date. If you are going to, what happens is the bigger banks, if you're in line for underwriting, you're just in line. You're just another file. And they can't pull your file and make you go any faster. You have no pull with the bigger companies. With the smaller companies, you keep on top of it and you say, hey man, we're not going to make our date, or what's going on, or how are we doing, check in. And they can pull the file and get it through faster, put it ahead and get it done so that you still close on time. So there's some perks, I feel like, or that I found to the smaller offices, or the ones that have underwriters close to them, because it's easy to pull the file and walk across the hall and be like, hey, I need this one, right? Let's get this one done first. Oh, thanks, Holly. Okay. Any other questions on lending? It's a huge one. Let's keep popping on. Any questions? Okay. All right, we're going to move on. So the next thing is inspections. Wow, this is a whole other like can of worms. Gotta love inspections. Things fall apart a lot during inspections, a lot. You can control this one more than you can control anything. It's a whole nother class for inspections, like getting deep into inspections. I did teach it in the Blueprint Library. There's an entire class going through inspections. But I would say if I were to give you kind of the top 3 things about inspections that you need to be cautious, careful of, and arm yourself with, you need to be educated. Okay. Educate yourself, pay attention, listen when you are having inspections done. Don't just be like, oh, here's the inspection report. This is the lazy realtor. Here's the inspection report. Send it off to my client. Let them read through it, decide what they want fixed, and then they can give it back to me, or tell me what it is, and I'll write it up and we'll make the request. That's lazy. Because you should be getting the inspection report. You should be going through the entire thing before you send it to your client so that you are aware of what might trigger that client. What are they going to panic about? What was big to them? What was important? Okay, so you go through that report, check all that stuff out, make some phone calls. Like, oh, the panel, the electrical panel's bad. All right, what does it cost to replace an electrical panel? I will tell you, if you don't replace an electrical panel often, which most people do not, your clients do not, they won't know what the cost is. So if they get an inspection report that says this electrical panel is a fire hazard, which like the Pacific, what is it called? Pacific Electric, I think is what it is. There's a certain electrical panel. It's a Pacific Electric, we've talked about this. Yeah, it's a fire hazard. They're from like the 70s. Every time I see one that's got like an orange logo and I'm like, oh, dang, yep, there we go. If you don't know what it costs to replace that and you send this to your client, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like $10,000 to replace that. That's the first thing. They always go to the worst case scenario. Always. It's just kind of what our brains do, right? I don't know if it's like a fight or flight sort of thing, but we go to the worst case scenario. Well, your clients will do that with inspection items. So comb through the inspection, take a look at like what actually is a hazard, what's really an issue, prepare yourself, be armed with the knowledge before you send it to your client, before you talk to them. Or if they're getting it emailed to them straight from the inspection, like the inspector, you better get on a look at it really quick and get your information down before you call and talk to them. Okay, so arm yourself. That is, you have got to be ahead of the inspections. Head of inspection. I have an opportunity to use the house I have for sale as a free inspection for training. Is that a good idea, or can I run into problems from material adverse facts? You're going to have to explain that one a little bit more. So you're saying you have, who's training?
Okay, sorry. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So there's an inspection company locally, and they want to use preferably a vacant home to train their employees, and it's just a free home inspection. They'll go in and check out the house, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's a good idea. But then I'm not getting the home inspection, but I'm allowing them to do it for training. But then I'm going to get the home inspection. Now I know things that I didn't know before.
Right.
Am I going to run into issues when I sell it? Not sell it, when somebody when I get an offer or I have to present, like, instead of doing their own home inspection, which I probably would still encourage, now that I have this information, what do I do?
So I did this on my $3 million listing. I did hire and have a home inspection done because we wanted to know what was wrong or if there was anything wrong that needed to be taken care of. It's going to be found out one way or the other. So you could spin it and make it a bonus, put it in the listing that it's a bonus, that the home inspection has been done. It's a free home inspection. And upon contract, they could have a copy. You do something like that. I don't know what works for laws in your state, but it's not a bad idea because then you're not caught off guard either.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know if that would like like kind of blow up in my face. Like sometimes the more you know, the worse it is.
No,
Like
the
on
more
my
you
from
know,
my
the
end, not from the
better.
buyer's end.
Yeah, yeah. The more you know, the better it is, and then you can at least then start to prepare your seller, and maybe even start to get some things fixed that might be, you know, adverse that need to be taken care of. Really, I will tell you this about inspections, and this is what I tell my clients: unless your foundation has an issue or the house is falling down, everything is fixable.
Mhm.
Everything is fixable.
Yeah,
So I
I
mean,
know he's not. I know he's not going to fix anything. That's why it's just going
yeah,
to be there for information.
yeah. Well, that's okay. That's okay, but make it a bonus. Somebody doesn't have to pay for an inspection.
Would that affect the selling price or the offer price? I'm sorry.
Um, would it affect the offer price if you had an inspection done?
Yeah, and then they saw it when you present the inspection that you had, like after the offer.
No, it's just the order of events is changing, but the same things are happening. Does that make sense?
Even
I
after
wouldn't.
an offer. I mean, yeah,
So,
after an inspection, they could come back and say, we don't want the house. That's fine.
yeah.
But then I already had it. So that's based on their inspection contingency, not the one I already had.
So you don't
Like,
have to
you
put
see what
it
I mean?
out for public knowledge, but if there's an adverse material fact in the house, like if you have mold or if you have, something that has to be disclosed, then you can disclose that up
Right.
front or have it taken care of, one or the other. But like a broken
Right.
door handle and I mean, all those little itty bitty things, they're not adverse material facts.
Okay.
So you don't have to go through and list the whole gamut of every itty bitty thing on the list. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it does. That's what I was afraid of. Like, once you know something, I have to report it. I can't withhold information. So, like, that's what I'm saying. It's good for me to do it. But in this house, they're probably going to find something.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, it's an
I
old
know it.
house. It's a fixer upper. Bring it on. Who wants a fixer upper? Here's the things that are wrong. It's
Yeah.
if you have it priced accordingly. I mean, that's a conversation you can have with your seller too. Is if you do a pre-inspection and there's stuff that's wrong with the house that needs to be fixed, then it's a really good time to have a conversation with your seller that says, "Hey, we've got this and this and this that's going to cost X amount of dollars to fix. So we ought to assume or be prepared that when we receive an offer, we're going to be probably getting a reduction because of that. Soften the blow
Yeah.
before you get an offer."
Yeah.
So, okay?
Yeah. Yep. Thank
Okay.
you.
Welcome. Okay. So, inspections. So, educate yourself, do your research. The more you do this, the more you will know um, the cost of things so that you can be able to talk your clients down. The third thing is with inspections, you have got to learn to manage the expectations and the emotions of your client. It's probably one of the biggest. But you can't manage, this is why they go together. You can't manage your client's expectations and emotions if you don't have the information to manage them with. You can't just say, stop crying. Like a child, right? You can't stop crying. Stop it. You can't say that. You have to be like, okay, Federal Pacific. Thank you, Colleen. It's the Federal Pacific Electric is the panel that is a fire hazard. The breakers don't trip is the problem, so they can overheat and it can catch on fire. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So I tend to have those replaced. $2,000 in our area. 2,000, 2,100. It's not a lot. In our area anyway. But yeah, so managing their expectations and their emotions, you've got to be able to do that so that they're not panicking. You got to bring them back down. And remember, sometimes with clients, they may panic, they may have their moment, they may kick and scream for a second, and then they might come back down after that. Oh, I'm so itchy. I'm sorry. I have allergies really bad. So sometimes it's like a multi-step process. Don't figure because your client says to you right now that there's no way they're going forward if X, Y, and Z aren't fixed, or man, the house is in just disrepair and they don't want it. Sometimes I give them some more time to think about it before we do any sort of cancellation on a contract. Give them a little bit more information so you can bring them back down to reality. So manage their feelings, expectations. There's a whole module on that too. Okay. This one, so those are two things kind of like very specific, right? Within the contract that we're talking about. Holly has a question. Holly?
Hey, so regarding inspections, like if you do a pre-inspection, would you, so if it comes back that there's things that you know are going to be an issue, would you price it higher with the expectation that you'll have to come down, or would you price it with the inspection repairs built into the price? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I actually just had this as well. So I would price it a little bit above because you know someone's going to negotiate. So I wouldn't put it like at your rock bottom. So I just had one where we were going to be around that 500, 525 mark. We put it at 550, very well knowing the house has a whole lot of stuff that has to be fixed on it. And we're under contract for 550, and we got the inspection done, and the buyer came back and said, we want you to take $17,000 off. And I was like, this is yesterday. And I was like, I said to the agent, he's like, well, there's all these things that are wrong. And then he gets, he blows it all up like it's like the end of the world. And he's like, the window has a crack. I said, great. The window's about $250 to replace the glass in a window. What else you got for me? Well, there's some moisture in the floor. Great. Well, they're going to replace the flooring anyway. So if you rip up the flooring, all you do is replace a little subfloor. It's not like there's a huge issue going on, right? You'd see it in the crawl space. Anyway, and then I had to proceed to tell him, we priced this house knowing that the house had issues. And he's like, well, yeah, I pulled comps and, I could see that it was a good price. Well, that's why it was a good price. So we're not taking $17,000 more off. You bought it at this good price because of that. So we'll negotiate a little bit, but we're not going to negotiate $17,000 worth.
Okay, so if you do price it like a little bit low, I just have one right now that I think probably is going to have some issues because they didn't do a pre-inspection, but I priced it lower, taking that into consideration. So if somebody comes back at me, I can just say, well, that's taken into the price already.
Yep.
So how do you combat agents that walk through and think and tell you that there's too much that needs to be done or whatever?
Oh, then I guess your client doesn't want to fix her upper.
Okay.
I say.
Okay. Yeah.
You will have clients that will try to beat you up. I will say they will try to beat you up. It happens a lot. And so you got to know, right? Arm yourself. Again, don't bring a knife to a gunfight. You got to have the information and be prepared so that when somebody tries to come knock you down, and another agent will, but they're going to come try to knock you down, you have your reasoning. You have your information. You feel strong, right? In what it is that you chose to put the price at, the inspection items, whatever it is. But you've got to have that knowledge. If you're the agent that's just floating through life and it's so easy to put a house up for sale and we just put a sign in the yard and we just put it online like everybody else, right? And we just do all that and you aren't arming yourself with knowledge and learning and growing, you will continue to either be dumb and have a hard time with your transactions. You won't end up with the repeat business because your clients they're not going to feel taken care of so well. Right? Because you're not providing all the information to them. So then your repeat business is lower. That's why agents have a hard time with, what is the stat? It was like 25% or something on 25-30% for repeat business and referrals. That is so low. So low. Why are the clients leaving their agents? Because they aren't finding the value from the agent. They're just another agent in another pair of high heels that's throwing a sign in the yard, right? And put a house up for sale. That's it. So you've got to provide as much information as possible. And if you aren't great at remembering things, keep a notebook. Keep a notebook of the cost of everything. What I will do with inspection items is anytime I have a client that gets some repairs done or if they're doing a remodel or anything, I ask questions all the time. Not even like during a transaction. I'm just saying if somebody replaced a water heater, I'll be like, how much did it cost you to replace your water heater? Take a note. Right? Oh, I replaced all the flooring in my house. How much did it cost you to replace flooring in your house? Take a note. All that information is research, and it's important because you then can talk your client down during these inspection items, or you can prepare them. Hey, we have this issue. The water heater's corroded, whatever, right? Your furnace is going bad. What is it going to cost to replace the furnace? Whatever it is, you're going to have that information for them. And then as you do this longer and longer, you'll just be like a database. You'll just gather more and more information. It's great. It's great. And then people will start calling you to ask you questions. You'll be like the database that they call, which is fine because they should trust you. Does anybody else, Holly, I hope that helped with your pricing. And I mean, you can do it higher and expect to take lower. You can put it right at, but you're going to have to make sure that you can keep your foot down if you're going to put it right at a certain price that's already accounting for the repairs.
Right. Yeah, no, that was really helpful.
Okay. And don't let other people beat you up, man. This guy yesterday was fun. He was kind of fun to mess with too, but he tried so hard. Oh, but there's all this. And I was like, yeah, nope. It was really fun. I said, you know what? We can tear the sheetrock off. We can rewire the whole house. We can re-sheetrock it. We can put a new HVAC system in. We can, redo the bathroom. We can redo that whole entire house, kitchen, everything for about $80,000. I said, so you're asking me for $17,000, $18,000 worth of repairs? No, don't think so. We're not redoing a house, right? Okay. Next one. Okay. This is communicate. Okay. So that's a really broad statement, right? So I'll just give you the top tips for communication in this business. You communicate with everyone. The lenders, the inspectors, your client, the other agent, the buyer's lender. If you're the listing agent, right, you can still chat with the buyer's lender. You need to communicate. This is not an autopilot job. If you find it to be an autopilot job, you're doing it wrong. And something's going to hit the fan sooner or later. You have got to be on top of what's going on during the process. So you need to communicate. You need to ask the questions. There's no dumb questions that you can ask anybody at all. So if you don't know the answer to something, or you're curious about something, or you don't know what's going on with the time frame, or you don't understand what's going on with the lender, just ask. Just ask the questions. I had an amazing conversation with an appraiser yesterday, and I love talking to the appraisers. I love it. When they call and ask questions, or they're gonna show a house, I will pick an appraiser's brain, and they always give me the information. It is amazing. Just, I'll ask them specific questions like what's going on in the market or what they're seeing or, whatever. But if I don't understand, I remember when I first started, I didn't understand how you made adjustments. Like there was no rhyme or reason for adjusting per square foot on comps. Because I would find out some appraisers will do it at $50 a square foot. Some do it at $35 a square foot. Some do it at, $40 a square foot. I'm like, what's the difference? How are we supposed to find consistency if everyone's got a different formula? And so I asked an appraiser. He had called to appraise either one of my properties or for my buyer. And so I sat and asked, I'm like, can I ask you a few questions? And I will tell you, appraisers appreciate it, at least the ones in my area. They appreciate it because the more educated we are, the easier their job is. They don't like working with dumb realtors, right? So the more educated we are, the better everyone's job is. The better we can price things, the better we can all do our jobs. We make it a lot easier on them. So ask questions, and appraisers are a really great place to ask questions too. Ask your lender questions. If you don't understand the process, if you're new, or if you just have never asked the questions to find out what happens during this whole process, ask them. Ask if you can sit down with them so you can get an overview of what happens during the lending process. Ask the lender why they think things fail. That would be a really great question in the lending section. Ask them, hey, I hear that things fail. Why do they fail? Like what have you seen? What are problems that you've seen that you've had? Ask them, right? Put them in the hot seat. In communication, the worst word that you could use is assume. I assume the lender ordered the appraisal. I assume the client's fine. Haven't talked to him for a while, right? I assume the other agent's doing their job. That will get you in hot water very quickly. So again, I'm not teaching you to be mediocre. Like, all of these things are more work. They're more work than what an average realtor puts in. 100%. But it will make you an exceptional realtor. And it becomes habit. All this becomes habit. It's just easier and easier as you go along. So don't assume anything. If someone says the word assume, I cringe. Oh, I cringe. I'm like, oh, you don't assume anything. You have no idea. No idea. So within that communication piece, you've got to make sure, even if everyone's supposed to be doing their job, and you really hope they all are, you need to check on it. Just do a quick check-in, a quick email, a quick text, whatever it is, just to verify that you're at the point in the transaction that you should be. One thing I've seen a lot lately is that, this is my favorite, you guys. This is awesome. So with appraisers, what I'm seeing is with lenders that are not my lenders usually, that I will say, when is the appraisal due, right? I've got the listing. Here's a scenario. I have a listing and our closing date is like October 8th. And I check with the other agent and I say, I haven't heard from the appraiser yet. When should the appraisal be happening? So we can stay on track. And then he checks with the lender. I get an email and they said the appraisal is due back on the 21st of September. And I was like, haven't heard from the appraiser yet, right? So then the appraiser calls me later that day and says, can we come out on the 27th to do the appraisal? And I was like, well, that's not the 21st, is it? Yep, sure, come out the 27th. I mean, that's the date that they can do it. So do you want to know what's happening in there? So when a lender orders an appraisal, they put in a request. It's like their expectation of when they want that appraisal back. So they'll put it out there, and then an appraiser has to pick it up. But when the appraiser picks it up, they have their own timeline. They have their own date that they can get it back. So what I'm seeing is the lenders aren't paying attention. They're just putting their date out there, assuming that the appraiser is going to get that appraisal back to them by the date that they stated they wanted it. And the appraisers are busy and they can't get it back by that date. But no one is following up. No one's paying attention at all. So if I'm not asking the question, we're going to be behind and we're going to close late, right? So ask those questions. Just because the appraisal says it's due back the 21st, the question that I ask the lender is, has anyone picked it up yet? That's the other piece to it. So we've had where they will go 2 weeks in our area, and this may not be your area, but see what's going on with the appraisals, right? Pay attention for the time frames for appraisers. In our area, it can take 2 weeks sometimes for an appraiser to pick up an appraisal. So the lender puts it out there and they think like, oh yeah, we want it due back by the 21st. And it's not even picked up by the 21st. Because everyone's refusing it. They're all too busy. Or some of these properties are too far out and they don't want to go to it. It's not an easy one. So they don't go out to it. So communication is huge. Ask the questions. You would call it, I would call it micromanaging, and it is a form of micromanaging, but I would more positively call it communication. Okay. Okay. Any questions with that? Megan had a win. Megan said that she had a listing that needed a lot of TLC, which she took into consideration with pricing. Another agent and her client called and said that the home wasn't worth more than $270 to them. I said, that's great. Thanks for your feedback. And they went under contract at $315 with someone else. Right? Just because someone's opinion is $270, if you know the data and you know what that home should sell for, you can throw their opinion to the side. Thanks for your opinion. We appreciate it. To them, it's not worth more than $270. But to somebody else, it's worth $315. Make sense? Okay. Okay. See if we can see this on the bottom. Okay. Read that. Creativity. Or the lack of creativity. Okay. So if you're not thinking outside the box and knowing that there is more than one answer to a problem, you will be shut down very quickly. Or you'll shut yourself down very quickly. Or you'll be defeated very quickly. Right? There is more than one answer, you guys, to every one of these problems. Always more than one answer. So if you need to take a moment, if you have an issue with a client, if you have an issue with an inspection, if you have an issue with a lender, and really dig into it, you've got to find other avenues. And if you don't know them, if you have a hard time with being creative, you need to start asking other people in your office or other people in the group, right? Or other people in the Elevate or whatever it is. You need to start asking more questions because there is more than one way to get stuff done. There is. And the lack of creativity that I find with agents is part of that autopilot where they just think, right, here's the offer, or, here's a look at the houses, here's the offer, here, it's the lender's part of things, and then we close, and then we're done, and we walk away with our giant paycheck, and everybody's happy. You've got to know that when you hit a stumbling block, there's not one way to do anything at all. And I am full on guilty. I used to think there was one way to do stuff all the time growing up. It's like, oh, but it's this way, and it has to be this way. It does not have to be this way. It does not. I'm going to give you a suggestion. If you have not yet, hold on. I'm going to out of frame just a minute. I forgot to grab it. See if I can find it. Oh, man. It's probably by my bed. I'm determined. Just a minute. Found it. A different color than I thought. Okay. Okay. Has anybody ever read this? Are you reading it right now? Amazing. You almost have to read it in pieces because there's so much information in here. So many studies. This is facts. Facts are amazing because it's not just somebody's opinion. Right? That's what I love about it is you get so much fact out of this. Read this. If you have a hard time with the creativity, and even if you don't, this is a great book for everybody to read because it will blow your mind. It will blow your mind in why you think the way that you do and how you can think differently, train yourself to think differently. Okay. So just because that we are the way that we are, that doesn't mean we can't improve and learn. This is an awesome, awesome book. Yeah, Holly. You listen to the books. Yeah, audiobooks are great. We drive all the time, so audiobooks are great. I can't remember if this one was on audio. Was this one on audio? Yeah, and get it from the library. Don't buy it. Yeah, you don't have to buy it. Get it from the library.
That book is excellent.
It is awesome, isn't it? It is amazing. Like mind-blowing, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Which will help you, again, if you read this book, this will help you to be able to also understand how your clients are thinking. Because your clients may have a different mindset, the way that they're looking at things. And so easing them out of that, it's very helpful to learn how to ease them out of that. So really, really good book. You've got to just reach out and ask questions. That's what I would say. If you're not a creative person yourself, if you can't really think outside the box, or if you haven't been doing it long enough to know what the options might be, then start asking questions. And if you'd be amazed, the more questions that you ask, the information that you can receive. So whether it's to contractors or lenders or, other agents, people in your office, your broker, your group, right? Us, ask questions. Okay, that's 4. That 4? I kind of combined some here. Okay, so the other time when I see things, and this isn't during the transaction, really, these were our number 2s, like our top 2 for problems during a transaction. This is usually what's going to be a problem. But you can be fired. Did you know that? You don't. Yes, the author is Dweck, Carol S. Dweck. You can be fired. So it's kind of like marriage, right? We can't just court the client at the beginning and then get them and just assume that they're going to love us and stay with us forever. You can't. So you still have to continue to foster that relationship during this. This is huge during listings. If you don't want to lose your listing, then you better make sure you're continuing to court your client during the listing phase. Lots of it. And some people need it a little more than others. Some people need a little more reassurance. Even like the most successful people, like with my $3 million house and my, really successful guy that owns that. Great businessman, does a lot of investments, does a lot of developing. He's still calling me like multiple times a week, wondering, how are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? Right? So you have to make sure that you're continuing during the listing phase too, to court your client so that they understand that you're doing your job, even if you are silently in the background doing your job. They don't know that. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know that everything's okay. So there's a lot of reassurance in this time period of the courting with your client that you need to provide to them. Reassurance is huge. Reassurance is huge. With all of this, you guys, the knowledge and consistency will lead you to the success part. So write it down. Knowledge plus consistency equals success. I'm going to make a t-shirt. If you don't keep, and that's going to apply to all of these things. It applies to your lead generation. It applies to everything in this job. Everything in this job. Just consistent. But you have to have that knowledge and ask the questions and learn. And that's what's going to make you like uber successful. Really. So just don't stop. Just keep going. Do you want a listing update? I will give you a listing update for my $3 million listing. So we are killing it online, like killing it. We are heads above every other listing in that price range when it comes to saves. Like I haven't even checked today. We had over 100 saves. Who has 100 saves on a $3 million listing? I actually went and checked my $500,000 listing that I have, and we had like 68 saves on that. But yet the $3 million listing has over 100 just on one platform. Crazy. So the online traffic has been great. We are tending to get out-of-state buyers, which I figured we would. Not all of them, but most of them. So we are getting our showings on the weekends. So I already prepared my client, set the expectation. Sorry, guys. I had to set the expectation with my client that, by the way, clients are coming in from out of state. So we would assume, right? Or not assume, but we would expect that our showings are going to be on the weekends because they're coming on the weekend. So we've had 5 showings so far. We had 3 the first weekend, 2 the second weekend, and it's a little quiet this weekend. So of course he started to panic. And I said, it's just fine. He goes, are we doing a price drop? No, we're not price dropping. Like, we can have one weekend where it's quiet. It's okay. Our online presence is good. Our feedback is good. And no one's complaining about the price. So what does that tell me? It tells me we just don't have the right person yet. And out of those 100 people that have saved it, more people are going to hop on a plane or jump in a car and make an appointment to come see it when the time is right. The other thing is, specifically for my client, he's not in a hurry. He doesn't want to actually move until next May. So he's just trying to be ahead of the curve in case the market goes down further. He wants to capitalize on that before. But he's not in a huge hurry. So we don't need to price drop in 2 weeks. So we'll hang out there 2, 3, I told him at least 3 weeks, maybe 4. We need to see what the traffic does. But it happens that we have a week where it's not busy, and that's okay. Again, setting the expectation, calming the fears, right? Communicating with the client so that they know what to expect. And at that point, then they understand that you are doing your job, even though we're not getting any showings right now. Because the data says it's 60 to 90 days in this price range to sell. So why would we assume that we're selling in the first 2 weeks? It would be great. It would be a slam dunk, but it's 60 to 90 days. The data says 60 to 90 days. So unless you're underpriced, right, the world's best deal, you're going to fall in that 60 to 90 day time frame. That's what the data says. And you'd be, when we talk about all the time, I'm always telling you to check your market, right? You need to see what's going on, how many days everything's on the market, like what's on the market, what the price ranges are, what the prices are doing. You need to understand your market. You've got to understand your market. Because, again, that's arming yourself with the knowledge that you can provide to the client so that they then are, like, calmed down, educated, not fearful. So, all right, guys. Happy Friday again. Anybody else have any questions? Requests? Just rocking it. Yeah.
I know I had a question.
Okay.
I have an open house. I'm hosting an open house for one of my colleagues on Sunday. And it's not in an area where I normally host a house. So what is 2 tips you can give me that's going to help me with this open house?
So you are going to want to know, if you're not familiar with that area, you're going to want to do drive around it before you go. See what it looks like. See what amenities are close, right? I mean, you could Google map it too, but I like to drive around to see what everything kind of looks like as well. Get familiar with the area. And then I also would pull comps for that immediate area as well. Because then you're armed with the knowledge for that house itself. Because not just comps, not just sold comps, I'm talking other things that are active. Because if you're going to pick up a buyer, thanks, Holly. If you're going to pick up a buyer at that open house and that house is not for them, what do you want to do?
Give them several other options.
Yep. So whether you want to print those options out and take them with you, other homes that are similar in price, you could do that and have that on hand, or have that knowledge. Get their contact information, get them set up on a search.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That really helps. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Anybody else?
So piggyback off of that, who asked that question? Cynthia?
Cynthia? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I have to do that too. So thank you for asking that, Cynthia. So you said to also have comps of what's not only closed, but active. And do you take those with you?
The actives, you can. I don't usually, because I try to just get their information and put them on a search.
Okay. Okay.
So here's the trick is that you want to like give them some information. So I verbally will give them information, but I want
Okay.
them to have to come to me to get like the goods,
Okay.
right?
Makes
You don't
sense.
want to give away the cow. So that's what they say. So yeah, so you just want to provide them with some information. You could have some printed out just in case. You know, you could even do a little flyer up if you wanted. But I really, if you're at an open house, your main objective is to get their contact information and get them set on a search. That is your number one objective at an open house. If they don't like the house that you're in.
Okay.
And when you walk around with people at an open house, I am careful so that they don't feel like I'm pushing that house on them. So I will tell them about the house, but I will make sure that it doesn't seem like I'm biased for the house, if that makes sense. Like that I'm dying to sell them that house, right? They need to buy this house, because then they won't feel like they can ask you about other homes or feel comfortable asking you to look at other homes, if that makes sense. They're going to feel like, oh, she just represents this house and she's just trying to sell this house and that's kind of it, and she can't help me with anything else. So I make sure that I'm asking a lot of questions when I walk around at an open house with people. And what is it that they like and what is it that they don't like? And does the house fit their needs? That's it. Like, yeah, the house is great. It's at a great price. Well, that's not, who cares? That's not what it is. Yeah, it can be a great house and it can be at a great price, but is it great for you? Does it fit your needs? What do you like? What do you dislike? Then, if you've done, like I just told Cynthia, if you've done your research and you know what else is on the market, if they say, well, it's a 3-bedroom and I really need an office, or this living room is too small, or the kitchen is too small, or the house is too old, then you already know, oh, well, there's another listing I can be able to show you that's newer, it's a little bit bigger, or that's whatever, right? I would get on for all those comps that are in that same price range in the area, and I would look through. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but I pull up the listings and I'll just scroll through all the pictures, because then I can kind of have an idea of like, oh, this one's really cute. That one's a little bit bigger, you know, whatever. How does it compare to the house that we have for sale? Then you immediately have an answer for their question. That's how you nab them every time. Every time. If they don't have an agent, that's how you nab them every time. So hopefully that helps. Okay, well, get out and rock those open houses this weekend. So we can pick up some buyers. All right, guys. Anybody else have any questions? If not, we'll sign off for the day. Okay. All right, you guys, have a good weekend.